In this Just Kampers how-to video, we're going to look at the process of removing the rear hub nut from your Volkswagen. Now the process is the same whether it's a Beetle, a bay window, a Split, a Type 3, even a Type 4. We're going to be doing it on a Beetle on this occasion, and the tools we need are very straightforward. Got a set of pliers here, and it's probably just as well if you've got some which are still quite sharp along the edge for gripping hold of this. You might have a split pin removal tool kicking around, might be useful as well. Obviously we have a replacement split pin. Good idea never to use those again. We've got a 36mm socket on a nice stout T-bar, and also we need an extension bar, a cheetah bar they sometimes get referred to as, but you can use your trolley jack handle, just turn it over. I'll show you how to do that later. Well, there is a hell of a lot of torque to undo this nut, and it's something we have to do with a vehicle firmly on the ground. But depending on what type of wheel you've got fitted, you might not be able to remove the split pin whilst it's on the ground. So you might have to jack the vehicle up safely, take the wheel off, remove the split pin, put the wheel back on, get it back down on the floor. Well, to remove the split pin, you use the pliers to straighten out the bent end and then tap it through, and you can pinch hold of the looped end and just ease it up. Well, this one seems to have snapped off, which is why we always put a brand new one in. Well, the first thing we need to do is to prepare the jack handle, unless you happen to have a length of scaffold tube around. So we can see that's the bit that fits into the jack, and I'm going to keep the handle bit itself and just pull it off the other end, stick it on there, and then this end is ready to go as our cheetah bar over the T-bar. And what we're going to be doing is actually placing this onto the axle nut, and then we're going to probably be needing to stand on the end of this cheetah bar as far out as we can go. You have to be safe. Now you need to have the car in a low gear, first gear or reverse gear, the handbrake on as far as it will go, and you may even need to chock up these wheels, otherwise the wheel will spin while we're trying to undo it. Well, I've chocked the front wheels. I've not actually put a chock under this back wheel here yet, and hopefully it will come undone. If not, I'll just have to put one in. And you really do need to keep your wits about you. A good bit of balancing required here, maybe even a friend, and you can go on their shoulder. But that wasn't tightened up as much as it should have been last time. And so that's going to be a relatively easy job to do now. Just to wind it out, we can take the cheetah bar off and just spin it round. There's very little chance of this falling off while we do the jacking up process, but it's probably just as well just to leave a few threads on there. Do the same the other side as well, because of course you always work on both sides at the same time, and then we can jack it up, get it safe on the axle stands, and proceed with removing the hubs. Once you've got the vehicle jacked up and it's safely placed on the axle stands and you've removed the wheels, this is what you'll find. And it's time now just to take the nut off, the last few threads. Now I'm expecting this one to slide straight off because it's more than obvious that there's a hub oil seal leak on here, and I wouldn't have thought we'll have any problems. Remember to slacken off, well, at least let off your handbrake, and quite possibly slacken off your handbrake cables. And oh my word, yes, there's plenty of oil and gunk all the way over. These brake shoes are absolutely trashed. So you're ready to put your rear hub or rear drum, depending on how you refer to it, back on. Now in this instance what we've done is replace the brake shoes and the hub oil seal, but you may have replaced the wheel cylinder, the backing plate, whatever. There's a couple of things you need to bear in mind. Firstly, your rear brake shoes will need adjusting, but for the time being we're putting the drum on. We just need to make sure they're equally spaced. So use a screwdriver just to make sure. And that looks to be fairly good, possibly down a little bit, so just literally a couple of mil down. Likewise on the other side, we've got a little gap at the top, I suspect, yes, a little bit tighter at the bottom, so we want to go up a little bit on the bottom because we're looking to slide that drum over and we don't want the shoes misaligned. A couple of last things to bear in mind. Make sure the threads are nice and clean, so with the appropriate safety gear on, a quick squirt of the threads and a clean up. The last thing we want is any grit in there because we're going to be putting so much force on that nut. As we're tightening it up, it will just strip the threads out, and that is going to be a complete disaster for you. And the same with the nut. Now these nuts are surprisingly cheap, so if there's any sign of any damage where anybody's, I don't know, maybe I've seen people use cold chisels and all sorts, just replace it, get a brand new one. Okay, so that's all ready to go. Final thing, quick wipe of grease on those threads, because they might be left for a long time. You don't want that rusting up. It'd be a nightmare to get the hub nut off next time round. It's just a case of picking up your drum, and you want to line up the splines as you go through. If you can't feel them, just take it out, rotate it a bit more. Feel for those brake shoes, make sure everything's clear. And then realise your shoes are just slightly over adjusted. What I'm going to have to do is take the drum off. Doesn't matter how many times you do it. And because these are new shoes, just do a couple of clicks on here. So join me again in a moment. Well, I've adjusted the star adjusters and just made sure that those shoes are nice and equal. As ever, we're doing this live. Oh, there we go. Perfect that time. Honest, I didn't cheat. And then you want to put your hub nut on. Spin it up. Notice how freely it goes once all the crud's out and you've got a bit of grease on there. Quick nip up. Next thing to do is to get the wheel on, jack the vehicle down, chock up the wheels, and then we can torque that up. Here's the fun time because we're going to be jumping up and down. Okay, before we put the wheel on, we just did this nut up by hand. So now, just to save a lot of messing about, we can just turn it with the added leverage of the T-bar until that goes tight, and then we can add our extension or our cheetah bar on. Do a couple of pumps with that, and then we can stand on it. For most Volkswagen applications, there's around about 220 foot-pounds, but please do double check on your specific model in your manual. You saw me jumping up and down just there, and what I'm doing now is coming down to have a look, because I'm going to need to get my split pin in, and unfortunately I'm only halfway over a hole, so I'm just going to have to crack it just that little bit extra, a couple more mil, so that I can get my split pin in. And bear in mind that we have sprint stars here. You might have the same problem with alloys. Once we've got this hole lined up, we're going to have to jack the vehicle up and take the wheel off to actually get the split pin in position. So once you've got the vehicle up again and safely back on your axle stands, you can put your split pin in. Remember, if you've got standard steel wheels, you won't have to go through this process. Now, split pins, people fit them in a variety of ways, but the idea is they stop the castle nut turning round, so you don't want to put it that way. You want to put it all the way in like that. And it is a split pin, it separates, so you use your pliers. And personally, I like to use the long side and bring it up. Keep it tight and push it down. And then the shorter side, you just push it over, and we can see that from up here. So you can keep things nice and neat. Some alloy wheels, you may need to actually trim the end of this off, but remember, split pins really, they're one use only unless you've got an absolute emergency. That's it. That's the axle nut all done up again. Job done.